Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again on another episode of Leadership for the Now. My name is Flori Lungu, and I'm so delighted to be with you today. And today, I'm joined by my teaching partner, Alena Ipanova. Welcome, Alena.
Hello, Florine. Nice to be here together again to create some more value for others.
Absolutely. I love that, and I love your spirit and energy. So, today's topic it's actually something that we got a request for, right? So, someone wrote in the comments to our first episode, and they ask, how can we help them? How can we give them some topics and some steps that they can implement to create an inclusive workplace? So, I think that's what we're going to cover today. And if you have any suggestions or any requests, just drop those in the comments, and we're going to go through the comments and make sure that we cover those on the next episode. So why don't we jump in with a question, Alena? Before we go into inclusion and how to create that kind of workplace that it's inclusive, why don't we start by defining what is the difference between diversity and inclusion?
A very good question here, because usually we see it all together, right? And now we also have this addition to it, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
Right.
So all these components are actually interconnected, but today we are gonna focus on inclusion. And just to specify with diversity, diversity, I would say it's a number of differences. So it's differences that we have in terms of not only like physical aspect of it, which might be also something, some thought-provoking topic for quite many people, because we used to define specific aspects. Like in Sweden, we focus on gender and ethnicity in terms of diversity. But there's also another layer of diversity, which is cognitive diversity, the way we think, the way we behave, we interpret things, the way we work together with others. So all in all, diversity is a potential. So we've got these differences. It is a potential for success or for failure if we don't do anything about that, if we don't create conditions. And then inclusion comes as a glue. So we really need inclusion for diversity to work. And we can say that inclusion and belonging kind of, they come together because belonging is not there if there's no inclusive environment. So to keep us focused on inclusion today, right? So I hope
Yes.
that it clarifies the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we need to really make sure that we make this difference between, because we know there are examples of companies that have reached their diversity goals. They maybe wanted to
Mm.
have 50-50 gender diversity, right? And they reach that. But it doesn't mean that the employees, the people in that company feel included or they feel that they're
Yes.
belonging, right? So that's why we want to focus today on how to create an inclusive workplace. So whether you have a diverse team or not, because you also provoked me with some ideas when you said, well, you know, Florian, even a homogeneous team could have cognitive diversity. They have
Mm.
different backgrounds, they grew up in different environments, which means that they think differently. So even those teams that we will consider homogeneous, they still need to focus on inclusion and make sure that people feel that they belong to that, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It impacts our happiness at work and the way we engage into our work assignments and with others, the way we, show up at work.
Absolutely. So, okay, then we're going to focus on inclusion, and I think one of the first things we need to actually define again. I know this is a maybe a lot of definitions, but we need to be clear, right? What we're talking about, and I think we need to make the differentiation between, those organizations that seek to create an inclusive environment and they have diversity goals just because they know it's the right thing to do, compared to those organizations that are really invested and they really care about their employees and create those environments because they care about people. So when you see, and we look at inclusion, it almost like, is there inclusion policies and then kind of an inclusion mindset or inclusion behavior? Because I think that's where we want to focus on the mindset and behavior, right?
Yeah,
Not on the policies and what companies
exactly.
can put in place, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's not enough. It's not enough to put a pingis board, and organize like relaxation room to for people just to show that this is like we work towards inclusion. Definitely, it's important to create conditions for that, to create environment. But if we have it all, but then the mindset, inclusive mindset, is missing, then it's not going to work. People will not treat it with the same attitude, whether you give them the company breakfast in the morning or not. So it's not going to be, the same appreciation of that if we approach it without inclusive mindset. If we really, don't pay attention to our behaviors, because I think what is important here, like intention is good, right? It's good to have an intention to create an inclusive workplace, but it's not enough. We have to signal inclusion. We have to signal psychological safety, because many of my clients shared with me, Alena, I'm coming to the meeting, and my manager says, I'm open for all the questions, I'm open for feedback, but I just can't enter that door. I just can't like come and share feedback because I don't feel safe.
Right.
So this is what I mean with signaling. So the way we talk, the language that we use, it's all about how we present, how we show up. So intention is not enough here. We have to work on
Absolutely.
the impact that we actually want to make.
Yeah, and today we're not going to cover the policies, right? So there are some
No, no,
because
no.
we also exactly we're
Let's
gonna
talk about mindset.
exactly and behaviors like how would a leader or how should a leader behave, right? Because I work a lot with leaders, of course. I work with their teams as well, but when I work with leaders, I always say that is the leader's responsibility. At the end of the day, I know it's everyone's responsibility to create an inclusive
Mm-hmm.
environment. But what I have found is that many times the leader sets the stage for the interaction between team members. So, in other words, how the leader would treat everyone in the team and also people that are not part of the team. Like when they're talking about the other departments, if they say, "Oh, these are
Mm-hmm.
these," we don't talk with these people. Like, what kind of message does that send to your team when you, as a leader, say,
Yeah.
"Oh, we don't talk with those. Those are the purchasing department." No, we don't. They're not our friends because they want to lower the cost on our spare parts. That's in my engineering where we were supposed to create the best quality, and what it meant for us is that we needed the best sensors, the best parts, but the purchasing department had a goal to lower cost. So if they will reach their goal, it will mean there will be a competing commitment with our goal. So they become our enemy. And if we
Mm-hmm.
as leaders, talk that way, that sets the stage for the team. So, uh, you know,
It's a very good example. Actually, Florin, I wonder if because I know that you're working with coaching and you're helping leaders to evolve in their leadership.
yes,
So when we touch upon these inclusive behaviors, because this topic is very interesting, because every time when I ask people to give examples, like share the example of behavior, because usually we refer to our feelings, right? So how this or that makes us feel, and then what could be the example of inclusive behavior, and how actually you help leaders to pay attention to that in your coaching.
absolutely. So, in my experience and what we do with leaders, we start with awareness. In other words, the first the first step in changing anything, and we're trying to change a behavior, right? And we're trying to implement a new mindset to develop a new behavior, a new habit of thinking and acting. It's awareness to be aware how we are perceived by other people, how our actions and words influence other people, and how they impact them. And so we start with awareness and really helping the leader. through our assessments and also through getting 360 degree feedback from their teams to understand how they're perceived. Does your team perceive you as being kind and soft, and they trust you to come to you and actually give you that feedback? Or do they perceive you as someone that maybe you're more directive, and you give more directions rather than asking questions? Do they feel that you really want them to participate in the decision making, or do they feel that you're more like imposing your decisions? So it starts with the awareness. And then when we look at examples, like if you like that example, another one will be, for example, even many organizations says our official language is English, but most of the small meetings are happening in the local language. Is that right? Yeah. So
Totally
so
can relate to that.
yeah. So what does it say? Like, and I've been in organizations that I really appreciated when I was the only non-Swedish speaking person, and everyone actually spoke actually English because of me, and I really appreciated that. And so this speaking the language that everyone understands, uh, explaining a joke. If you are, a local team, and now we can use the example of Sweden, but it doesn't matter where your team is located. You have some jokes in English that we non-native English speaker will not understand. So if you know that someone on your team is not native, English speaker, maybe you want to explain that. If you feel that they have not got the joke, maybe you want to explain it, or even avoid the joke, not knowing how that will be perceived. Um, Being aware of, for example, what's going on in their culture. So someone being of another religion or from another background, and maybe they celebrate something, and it's very important. Like, for example, midsummer for Swedes is the most important celebration of the year, right? You cannot
Hmm.
just ignore that. But at the same time, for someone like me, I'm an Orthodox. Easter, it's important for us, right? So we celebrate Easter. It's not a big deal for Swedes to celebrate Easter. So if I'm a leader and I know, or I'm a team member and I know someone is of a different background, different religion, and Easter is important, maybe I'm more open and more flexible when they need some time off when it's not the Swedish Easter, because usually the Orthodox Easter is 1 week before or after, right? So all of these little things add up and create that feeling of inclusion and belonging.
Hmm. Actually, as you were sharing that, I started thinking about one more important point in terms of inclusion, and some things that I'm noticing when I work with teams, and especially when I consult internationals who are moving to Sweden, the importance of self-inclusion, because it's, inclusion and belonging. This is something that we feel inside of us. We can have environment and conditions, but something about like how we are able to include ourselves, how willing we are to open up uh, in order to be included. Some of the cases that I face in my practice, like it can be a new team member and everybody is inviting this new team member to hang out after work, or for some kind of activities. But this person might be introvert or might have a family while others don't have a family yet. So it might, impact their relationships, like social relationships. This person might say, okay, I can't join you, or I don't have time, and so on. And then for a while they invite, and they stop inviting this person.
Yeah.
So then exclusion takes place, and just the feeling of it, that okay, I'm not included any longer, they are not inviting me. So how can we take on this responsibility as well, to include ourselves as a first step, and to
Uh,
reflect on that, what is actually important for me to in being included? What does it mean to me? What kind of behavior, relationships I want to have around me in order to feel how I want to feel?
Absolutely. And that's such an important point. And I can relate to that when I first, came to Sweden. And at the beginning we didn't know how long we're going to stay in Sweden. We said we're going to stay for 3 years at least to see how it feels, and then we're going to see, and now it's it's 8 years. So forget about that. Anyway, what I want to say is that we decided that we want to be included. We decided that we want to learn the language because we want to feel included. We decided that we want to go and experience the things that Swedes experience. That's a decision we made, and I think that's what helped us. So that aspect of self inclusion is really, really important. Thank you for mentioning that. And the other
Mm-hmm.
aspect you mentioned, like the example of inviting someone to the after work, but not being aware that they have other commitments at home, right? So when it comes to awareness and empathy, right, it's a part of that. Like being aware that if this person has children, maybe they're not so flexible to meet in the afternoon. I know when we were supposed to have after works with an organization I was working with, well, it was very difficult. Some people said, Fridays, I'm always at home. Fridays never work for me. Or others said, well, I'm not going out for after work before Wednesday. It should be Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So because they each had they were at different stages in their lives, and they have different,
Mm-hmm.
private lives that impacted that. So us being aware, we knew, okay, so for people with children, well, maybe being away the whole evening from home, it's a big commitment, right? So that's where awareness, again, in my opinion, comes into place. And empathy, empathizing for someone that it's in a situation that is different than ours, but understanding that for them it's a big commitment to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, I totally agree with that. And I would add to it as well, like our ability to listen, not to listen to reply or to listen to, just to take like a tick the box or something, but to really understand and ask some questions or notice some changes. The more we pay attention to that, it can be very tiresome for our brain actually to listen actively, right? But the more we pay attention and we train this muscle, then we'll be able to notice those variations. And when it comes, for instance, to giving feedback or receiving feedback, it's not only, when somebody comes to you with the feedback, you should be also like self-aware and mention that you're probably not in the mood to receive feedback right now. So you're not in your, best self at the moment. So maybe for the better outcome, it's good to do it tomorrow. So these kind of things, that responsibility is on both parts,
Yeah,
and self-awareness here is the key, that's for sure. And
yeah,
listening and empathy, those things that you've mentioned as well, I can really relate to that.
yeah, absolutely. If I can add one more example here, a client that I work with, shared with me that there is it's the phenomenon what we call ageism, right? So either you have an older generation that is already in the organization, and now you have new employees which are younger, maybe Gen Z or something like that, and there is kind of this generational gap because maybe the older generation do not really relate to how it is for a Gen Z to maybe be a digital nomad or not see this organization as being, their place of retirement. And again, this is the leader needs to be aware of these differences and try to bridge that gap and help the older generation to be aware of the possibilities and how today's workplace looks like, and also for the younger generation maybe to be aware of, okay, but my parents, my mom only worked at one place, and my father changed jobs once in his lifetime, so or career time. So again, those were the expectations, but they cannot place those expectations on us and the younger generation, and also the younger generation should respect the choices that the older generation made in the past. And as a leader, that's where they need to be able to put themselves in the shoes of both these kind of parties, right, and try to bridge that gap. Again, this is a common scenario as well.
I would even expand on that, and I would say that possibly not to put them into the shoes of others, but like be willing to take a totally like third perspective on that. Because I usually use analogy of a line, like when we have like two different opinions or two different options, so we stand on different sides, and it's not about just me going to that side and uh, to put my feet in the shoes of another person, but it's also about the ability to withdraw myself from this line and to have a look at both of us, in retrospective, and see, okay, and this is what we have. We step out of our ego, and what serves us best in this or that situation. It also helps to foster this inclusive mindset and create more inclusive environment. So just
Absolutely. Yeah, that's difficult to do when you are one of the party, right? But it's probably
yeah, it is. It is.
that's where I see the
Yeah.
leader's role being very important, right? When they should not take one part.
Yeah, exactly. It's so easy to say that, oh, we are so open-minded.
Yeah,
We shared some statistics about self-awareness, right? It was like about 90% people consider themselves being aware, and only 10, 15 really are. So we all
yeah,
think that we are so open-minded until somebody challenges our perspective or our views, and then the clash happens. So how do we navigate, and how we actually um, accept that it's not about like being right and wrong, it's about actually finding the best possible solution, the best possible way in this situation.
absolutely. Do you have some steps or some frame or something that you could share with us to develop an inclusive mindset?
I have one framework, which is not to say one of my favorites, but I think it's a really good and solid framework just to reflect on and to use in your practice. So I can briefly share about that, and
Absolutely.
it is
What?
it is actually from the book by Ruchika Tulashan, uh, Inclusion on Purpose. So I really recommend it. So the framework that she developed there is called Bridge, and each letter basically represents the meaning. So it's just
Mhm.
easier to grasp what it is. So we can unpack it. I
Sure.
think we have
So what?
we have
Yeah,
time for that, right?
we we
So
we,
basically,
we try. We try. So
yeah,
what's the
let's try.
B?
Let's try. So B stands for being uncomfortable. And being uncomfortable is a feeling that we usually try to avoid, but this is something needed for growth. So growth mindset, inclusive mindset, really, it is a necessity. We need to stretch. We need to really sit with uncomfortability, whether it's realizing that we have certain biases and possibly we acted upon them, but now we realized that this behavior doesn't work and we want to change, whether it's taking someone else's perspective into account, which might not feel very comfortable. So just willing to be uncomfortable and making uncomfortable comfortable, I would say, or
Yeah,
unfamiliar familiar. So this is a good way to go.
absolutely. And I think the most uncomfortable thing for many of my clients is to acknowledge and admit that they don't know. Like, I don't know, I don't know your background. I don't know your culture. So I need help, right? And help me
Mm.
understand your perspective, right? And that's where we get uncomfortable. But we're not gonna go deeper in that because then we can have an entire episode about that. So what's the R, right? So we got the being uncomfortable. What's the R?
So R is about reflection. So reflect on what you don't know. So consider some perspectives that you might take into account. Consider something that might hold you back. So just being comfortable again, becoming comfortable with not knowing and being curious to explore.
Right
So
on. Yeah,
reflection in itself is very powerful too.
absolutely. I can see. Yeah, I can see that. What's the I then?
So I is about inviting feedback.
Mm,
And really, not just inviting with like gesture, behavior, words, but really meaning and signaling it that you are taking it in, you're willing to take it in, you're willing to listen, and you are willing to challenge your own biases as well. And I think we can do the whole episode just solely on feedback. It's also
yeah,
one of the interesting topics, which we all need to work on more.
yeah, absolutely. And yes, I'll take a note for that for a future episode on feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think we can go deep in that. But I think you're making such a good point. So then we have being uncomfortable, reflection, inviting feedback. What's the D then?
So it's about don't get defensive.
I
And
like that.
as we mentioned about open-mindedness, yes, we are all open-minded until somebody challenges our perspective and our idea. So just not being defensive, but trying to approach things with curiosity, and that okay, we might think differently. It doesn't exclude um, my point of view from the map. So um, it's not about right and wrong. It's about different points of view, and they take place, and they have a right to take place. So let's be curious about that, to explore why you think the way you think, why you consider this important. Just trying to understand without being so defensive.
Right on. Yeah, I can see how that would help inclusion, right? Not trying
Hmm.
to exclude those that we don't know or anyone who's challenging the way we've done things, up until now.
Yeah.
Right on. So what's the G, right? We have if
So
I
the
spell this
G
right.
is very important one. It's super important. It's grow from your mistakes,
Mm,
and this is something. It's a mindset as well. How do we take failures? How we admit our mistakes, and what do we do? How do we act upon it? How do we choose to respond? Or maybe we are just reacting on autopilot. So again, self-awareness comes here into play as well.
absolutely. And the last one.
And the last one is expect that change takes time. So it's not,
Mm,
something, and inclusion is not something that happens over time, and that happens at the moment. I mean, but it takes time, and uh, I also want to mention here that the challenge that I see now, that people are willing to work with inclusion, which is a really good thing, but then they want to install it as a system. So they want to, really make it work as a system, but without this mindset upgrade, without this more human touch or soft side, we can't really make it work. We can put good structure in place, but it will not give us the effect that we are expecting. So the intention again is good, but the impact is not what we planned for.
yeah.
So it is important to take it step by step, and to actually start with leaders, start with yourself. As you mentioned, reflect on your behaviors, work with self-awareness, which is, it's a tough work. Not everybody's willing to do that.
Yes, absolutely. And if you think about creating an inclusive workplace, it's about cultural change, right? And creating a culture, right? And when you think
Hmm.
about what culture is, in my experience, culture is group habit. Like what defines a company culture? If we talk about a culture, we're not talking about the company as an entity. We talk about our interaction and our experience with some people from that organization, right? Maybe my manager, my team, and I define the company culture as the interaction with those people. And so when you think about now creating this inclusive mindset, and that a culture is group behavior, mindset is also the group of action, thoughts, and behaviors, right? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to change human behavior and then culture, right? And of course, these things takes time. It's not going to happen overnight because all of those
Yes.
things that will be challenged, all of the things that are our baggage that we come with, have been programmed into our mind over years. Now we're not going to just change it like you invite Alena or me, we do a workshop and that's it. Not at all.
Yeah, yeah. It demands lots of work. And to this equation with behavior and result, I would also add our thoughts. Like we act upon our thoughts. So what we think, so just also being aware of the patterns that we have, of the biases that we have, and how they drive our behavior and how we actually want it to be. Just paying attention to that and being clear on our own values and how they go in line with the company culture. So it should be the environment where we can thrive, where we can be ourselves, like authentic selves. And when there's no, kind of like punishment for mistakes, like we know that, okay, we are learning, and the mistake, I would say, is the greatest opportunity to, maybe it depends what kind of mistake, but generally, it's a great opportunity to check how to check your ability to navigate. So how do you find the way? Okay, this is what happened, and it can be like a terrible situation, something on financial side or whatever it can be, and then how do you actually navigate? So these are some of the aspects for reflection, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you were not able to join us for the entire show, or maybe just see a part of it, then we're gonna create a summary with summarizing these points because maybe you don't see kind of the step by steps, and we're gonna share that with you. So if you wanna get a copy of the summary, just write summary in the comments or any of the point the post that you see this video playing, and we're gonna share that with you. Anything else you want to add, Alena? Because we are over time as usual. We have a lot
Yeah, we are over
of
time.
yeah. I think
We can
it's
have these conversations forever.
yeah because we're both passionate about the topics and we work with them and we there is so many things that we could share, but we hope we added some value. And if there's anything else you want to add, or we're good for now. I mean, we kind of
I think we are
covered.
good for now. I think we are good for now. And it was, from my side, it was really interesting to hear about your experiences from coaching and some examples as well from your life and from your, move to Sweden. So really grateful for that as well.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. And likewise. I mean, you have an experience that I don't have with diversity and inclusion, and I always value your opinion. So thank you for sharing that. I think it was a value packed episode, and we're going to create the summary for those of you who are not able to join us live. And we see each other in 2 weeks' time on March 1st with another topic. And I think we're gonna.
Yes.
I don't know what the topic is right now, but we're gonna announce it.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Take care. Speak soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.